You know, when the postseason extends to a 12-team college football playoff and we scatter the games throughout the week, that means you get special editions of the Matt Barrie Show presented by Allstate. That's exactly what you have here on a Saturday morning. Matt Barrie, Paul Finebaum, as it's time to check in with Paul Finebaum. The morning after Ohio State beat Texas to head to the national championship game to take on Notre Dame. And Paul, for the first time since 2004, 2005, we have back-to-back years in which the SEC will not be playing for a national championship.
I managed to hear that this morning on a plane from Dallas, sitting with 225 of my closest Ohio State fans and friends. Matt, that is significant, and I know everybody always, thinks that those of us who live in SEC country try to hide things like that. And even today, we're still arguing for Alabama to get in. But that is a dramatic moment. It's a seminal moment in time that I really didn't expect, especially with a 12-team playoff. It is really amazing when you think about that was before Saban. Urban Meyer had just arrived at Florida. Les Miles was about to start roaming the sidelines. I mean, to think that we are in that moment is cause for a lot of concern, at least in the southern part of the world.
So, all right. So you and I got on here yesterday for a Penn State Notre Dame recap and a Georgia Texas, a Texas Ohio State preview. I said I thought Ohio State would win by double digits. They did. I thought Ohio State had numerous chances to put that game away early. They stepped on their toe, a lot of penalties. Do you believe, and let's get into the question here about why I said that. Do you believe expansion in the playoff has actually hurt the SEC? And I'll tell you why. Old playoff, you win the SEC championship, you get in the four-teamer, you just have to win one game and you're playing for a national championship. Now there's a road to a championship that you actually have to fight your way through.
I would agree with you. Yeah, you think about Georgia would have been in the 14 playoff this year. Ohio State probably wouldn't have, would they? They would have been right on the cut line. So it does make it more complicated. I mean, there are a couple of SEC teams in the past that probably wouldn't have gotten through a gauntlet like this. But I think in many ways we almost end the season with where we began it with Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're still the most talented team. And Matt, I was vacillating. I mean, I was always on Ohio State, but as I walked out of the stadium a couple of hours ago, I kept thinking more about what Texas let go. And if you were ever going to beat Ohio State, Friday night was it.
Yep.
And they couldn't do it. And the last touchdown and the Quinn Ewers interception was just poetic license to Quinn Ewers' career, because at halftime in walking around that stadium, I ran into more, especially young Texas students.
Yeah.
They wanted Arch Manning in the game for the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Ewers had done a nice job at the very end of the half, they never could quite adapt to him once Arch showed up. And I just thought of the penalties that Ohio State had in the first half. They never
Yep.
could get uncomfortable, and they really could have been beaten, but they weren't, because ultimately they have so many playmakers, so much talent that somebody finally stepped up and made the play, and it was over.
You know, and you look at it because I saw it firsthand against Arizona State when I was at the game in Atlanta, that Quinn Ewers in Texas have it in him. He might look shaky for 3.5 quarters, but when the game's on the line and the game counts, he seems to find a way to get it done. And that's where we were headed last night. Goal to go. They throw that pitch toss to the left side, which they're going to be questioning that play call for a while. My guess is Sark and the offense had a look they thought they liked. Caleb Downs shot the gap, and that was the end of the game because they lost 7 yards. But it seemed as if they were going to find a way to pull it out again. And Ohio State has time and time again shown, at least in the playoff, that it's not going to happen. I mean, this is This is the best team in the country.
Yeah, and listen, we've all said the same thing about Steve Sarkisian. He's an elite play caller. Nobody in his league. Well, uh, first and goal, there are a lot of people in his league because he whatever he saw, and it doesn't matter. That game will be remembered for one play.
Yeah.
And I was sitting with our guys on the set late last night, and they're all talking about, well, I know that was the most important. I said, guys, you're too smart. The people that I hang out with, we're just fans. We're going to remember one play because we'll see it on Sports Center 1,000 times. And that's just all there is to it, Matt. And it wasn't like some chump made the play either. I mean, that was an elite player, uh,
Hmm.
Jack Sawyer making the touchdown. But by the way, I mean, who on Ohio State is not elite?
Yeah, and that's kind of been why people are critical of Ryan Day because I know in certain parts of the country people don't look north of the Mason-Dixon line for college football powers. But if you actually just combed through, and I think a lot of people are starting to do it now because of the 12-team playoff, because you have to like dissect eight more teams. If anyone paying attention up north looked at Ohio State's roster, there are probably as many five stars, if not more, on Ohio State's roster than at Georgia, than at Clemson, than at Alabama, than at LSU. Any of these teams. Ohio State could argue, and I've said it since day one, is the most talented team in the country. And people are starting to be like, uh-oh, did we just wake up the northern pockets of money?
Yeah.
Because two northern teams are playing for a national championship.
Yeah, and an Ole Miss running back was one of the stars of the game, and a former Alabama cornerback made one of the most important plays, and in a Kansas State uh, journeyman was the quarterback. I mean, there's just so many remarkable aspects, but the portal is the answer, Matt. Portal and money. And every I sensed this a couple of years ago at Alabama as Saban was winding down, the
Yeah.
fatigue was growing with going deep into people's pocketbooks. Saban could make the call, next guy can't. He's not as effective. And you think Lane Kiffin watching that game last night would have liked to have had Judkins this year because I mean he needed a couple of yards against Kentucky and maybe he wouldn't have had to rely on field goals that didn't go through. But ultimately things are different and. I don't care what any of my colleagues say in the South. There's no way to sugarcoat this year for the SEC. There's no way to alibi it. There's no way to say anything other than we got a team from Indiana and a team from Ohio playing for the national championship in Atlanta.
Yeah, and no one's arguing the prowess and how good football is in the South of the SEC. But the thing that happened this morning and today, when you look at the T-shirt that's being printed for the game in Atlanta, is that you don't see an SEC school on it. And throughout the year, there was the chest thumping of we play better schedules, we play harder schedules, we earn it week in and week out. Okay, be that as it may. But if that's the case, then you have to take that 12-week, 13-week schedule beating and bring it into the playoff and show that your path has got you battle tested for these playoff moments. And it just didn't happen.
No,
It didn't happen.
and I mean, there are a lot of reasons why it didn't happen, and I'm not going to even offer them because they'll sound like excuses, Matt. And I'm not going to do that on the day after. I mean, it's not right and it's not accurate. Everybody has the same issues. It's just how you deal with them. And you start out with who was number one in the country when the season began. It was Georgia. That was probably a little bit inflated. Carson Beck didn't have a very good year. They didn't really have elite receivers. They had a bunch of injuries, but so did everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So cry me a river because Georgia had a couple of players that were banged up, and Quinn Ewers was banged up. Well, he was 100% last night. and it still wasn't enough. Because I mean, I don't. I'm not even blaming Quinn Ewers. I'm blaming Steve Sarkisian. He gave he. I don't know what in the world he was thinking. I really don't.
And a lot of people look, and we had talked about this on the preview show yesterday about some of these coaches might get some overtures from the NFL. And as the teams get eliminated, we'll see which ones take interviews or even have interest. We'll get out of here on this one. And this is going to be something to watch moving forward. We'll preview Ohio State, Notre Dame in the coming days. But the one thing that I believe will be the impetus for change with the college football playoff going forward, Paul, Notre Dame has absolutely hacked the system, and they're the last one standing. You know how much money they are making all to themselves for making the championship game? $20 million. Whereas the $20 million Ohio State's making has to be shared with the rest of the league. Notre Dame's not in a league and they get to keep it all to themselves. I can't imagine any of these conference commissioners are digging the fact that Notre Dame has completely rooked the system all the way to the championship game.
No, and they're the only one who has to who's can't skip the first round too because of the setup. And I've always argued I felt like they needed to be in a league but you know I think that is the story of the year in college football, Matt, is really what Marcus Freeman has done. Um, the SEC fall from grace is rivaling that, by the way. But that's okay. But I love the Notre Dame story because yeah, they haven't they're not winning. They're not playing for the national championship with Ole Miss's running back and Alabama's
Yeah.
star defensive back. I mean, they've developed players. They've gone out and brought in players from Duke and other schools, just like Indiana did. But and ultimately they found a way, and they beat some good programs along the way. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm searching for the right word to put a bow on yet another agonizing night for the conference. But yeah, I think the reality is here, and I know that come Monday, the Finebaum callers will I'm sure come up with an excuse.
Yeah, and you wonder what they'll say, how they'll well, we know how they'll say it. Because now you're going like if I just outside of this game, just big picture, how pissed are you if you're Kirby Smart that your quarterback entered the NFL draft and then Miami came and got him? That
Yeah,
doesn't
I mean,
seem like that's something that's going to sit well in Athens.
no, I think a year ago, this week was another one of the biggest moments that forget Alabama. Caleb Downs was thought to be going to Georgia.
Right.
And, would he have made a difference in the Notre Dame game? I mean, that's you have to wonder about it. I mean, that guy makes a difference in every game that he's in. That was maybe one of the everybody was so Alabama centric, but the idea that he spurned Georgia, the school that he almost went to at the beginning, to head to Ohio State, played a big role in what we're talking about right now, and I'm really eager to see what else will happen because the fact that Carson Beck didn't stay at Georgia doesn't surprise me, but he's going to the ACC after being the Heisman favorite in August at Georgia.
Yeah, it's hard to believe January 11th, which ironically enough, the national championships usually today,
Yeah.
yesterday, the day before. So we're always all in the off season as of today, but with the extended playoff, we get to January 20th. But we can say with certainty, every SEC school now moves into their off-season conditioning and their winter workouts because they won't be playing for the national championship. How much will that tick off the coaches and the donors? It's going to be an off-season for the ages down south to see how they rebut this 20-year history that was made on the downside of them not getting through.
And Matt, I know the perfect place to sample how that reaction will be. And it starts Monday and it will not end until someone does something about what happened this
Yeah.
year. And,
You,
and And that's what I'm so excited and interested in finding out. What is the reaction going to be other than Lane Kiffin complaining, and pundits at ESPN? I sound like one of the fans now, beating their chest for SEC schools.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting in that we have from now until SEC Media Days to let the cleansing all begin because that's what they're going to need come Monday. Finebaum Show. Make sure you pay a listen to that. It's a great program on SEC Network. This is also, we'd like to thank a good program, the Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. Second straight year, I want to get to see Paul at the National Championship. We'll make do somehow. We will record a preview and then a postseason national championship recap and round out the season. So, Paul, thank you. Get some rest, and we'll talk base with you soon.
Thank you, Matt.